What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with Mint Hunter Comics, and today we're talking about the 10 best gimmicky covers of all time. Historically speaking, when publishers want more sales out of a book, sometimes it leads them down a path of some pretty gimmicky ideas. A lot of it is honestly pretty funny by today's standards, but some of it is actually pretty clever and still works to this day. If this video does well, I'll hit you guys with a top 10 worst of all time as well. We're going to start the list off with some die-cut covers, most notably the Superman Reign of the Supermen die cuts. I'm talking about those 4 issues that all look pretty bland from the initial cover, but you open it up to see Superboy, Cyborg Superman, Steel, Eradicator. And what's interesting about these cover/interior covers is some of these shots of those characters are still the most iconic imagery of those characters, that if you think of Superboy, that might be the image that's in your mind. So that particular die-cut imagery was saved a bit by some genuinely good and iconic art. I also want to give you guys a bonus before we get to our next one of Wolverine 50, in which it shows his claws ripping through the files of what appear to be his fake memories and haunted past. What a cool touch. Now we gotta talk about cover enhancements, embossed, chromes, all that, and you can't mention that without Silver Surfer number 50, which also, unrelated, is my favorite comic book from Marvel of all time. That sounds like a joke. It's not. I've read that issue to death. It resonated with me as a kid a lot. I always am a sucker for origin issues. You've got Silver Surfer for the first time in full chrome on the cover, and they finally managed to do it right. So it looks good, and most of them still actually hold up pretty darn well to this day. Nothing looked out of place or lazy about this, and I think it's the composition and effective use that really solidifies this as one of the best gimmicky covers out there. Next up, we got to bring up Lobo number 1. I'm talking about his ongoing series, and what makes this so good is the fact that he's making fun of cover enhancements at the time. In 1993, particularly, there was a huge push for all these enhancements, and Lobo's got a codpiece thrust up in your face, hiding his junk, saying, "I got a cover enhancement for you right here." Satire? Perfect. Iconic Lobo? Perfect. An actual effective use of a chrome enhancement? Perfect. It's clear that Val Gimmicks wanted to make fun of the ongoing trends at the time. Next up, you can't talk about gimmicky covers without bringing up those gosh darn glow-in-the-darks, man. There were a lot that came out in the 90s that really don't work that well, or don't even seem to glow in the dark at all, even though they say they do. Well, the one that I'm thinking of that works the best is the first, and it's Ghost Rider 15. It's an all-skull cover that does glow up in the dark, and it is hailed as the first successful glow-in-the-dark cover. One of the things we look at by making this a list of gimmicks that work is people still to this day wanting it. As a bonus, my favorite glow-in-the-dark is actually Spectre number 8, because it shows that the darkness hiding in everyone's souls. It shows a ton of people, and then the glow-in-the-dark shows all their skeletons. It's really creepy. It's from one of my favorite comic book runs ever, and it really sticks with Spectre's themes from that Ostrander run. Next up is going to go to Man of Steel number 30. Now, there's 2 covers of this one. I'm talking about the one that came in the poly bag. It was a Superman who had just returned from the dead versus Lobo issue. And what's really unique about it is it would actually come on the back with little vinyl decals that you would cut out as basically stickers that, due to the vinyl material, would actually stick to the cover. So you could form any Superman versus Lobo cover you wanted. The power was in your hands how you wanted the cover to look. This has been rarely seen since, but this is a really cool thing, and that's actually one that I wouldn't mind rearing its head again. That whole paper doll thing, that's when creative gets pretty cool. Next up, of course, we're again talking about 1993, a year that you'll hear repeated again in this video, I promise you. Valiant Comics had, by this point, introduced and perfected the chromium enhancement covers. Bloodshot, Lobo 1, Silver Surfer 50 were all examples of a chrome enhanced cover, but what was the first full Thermochrome enhanced cover and wraparound issue. That would go to Exo Manowar number 0 by Joe Quesada. This cover looks extremely dated, but to the time. But if you've ever held it in your hands, it actually does a pretty good job. They really did the full commitment to it, and it is gaudy and ridiculous, but you can't say it's not too cool. And for our fourth entry on this list, we're actually going to go much more recent than the rest of these almost all 1993 books. And we're talking about the New 52 Villain Month. Remember when they had 52 separate villains all pop up? And they all had their lenticular enhancements. Lenticular technology got a lot better. I actually don't like the look of a lot of lenticular covers from the 90s, but by this point, they kind of got it down, and some of them are pretty iconic, like Jason Fabok's Joker. The Bane one's pretty recognizable. Some have faded into more obscurity, but some of these stand out as still pretty desirable books. And people do love to get them graded because of the thick material of that lenticular cover. It actually lends to a much more structured and strong book and could lead to a possible 9.9 and even a Gem Mint 10. What really worked about this, though, is it actually encouraged readers to collect them all, which is a very 90s mentality. And you can't have a gimmick list and not mention Jab number 3. Every single copy of this book, and I do mean every single copy, was shot with at least a .22 caliber bullet. You could actually pay up and go all the way up to a shotgun, which was, as they said, guaranteed unreadable. They spent over 3 days shooting every single issue that they created of Jab number 3. Every copy you will ever find of this book has at least some bullet hole in the middle of the book. This is also yet another one on this list that seems to be satirizing and making fun of some of the gimmicks at the time. Once again, in 1993, we should just call this video the 1993 crazy year or something, I don't know. Mark Evanier and Sergio Aragones made a follow-up to their famous Gru comic entitled Magnor. And with issue number 1, they opted to go with something unlike any comic at the time. The book came polybagged to hold the pop-up cover in, and the creators hilariously mocked the whole speculators market on the cover as a boy is distraught that his sister has opened up the copy of Magnor, thus rendering it no longer mint. I love that they had enough foresight to make fun of that at that time, and the pop-up was pretty effective too. Finally, we have to give the number 1 spot to what I think is the most out there, most creative one, something that frankly I would not have thought at the time. And it is going to be Blood Strike number 1. And what you could do is you could rub the blood from the cover. And it came with a cover with blood splattered over a group picture, but it was thermochrome, meaning that it would disappear if you rubbed it. So an actual comic that responds to the heat from your fingers and would disappear. I don't know who thought of that, but that is getting pretty weird. And what's interesting is this spawned a couple other issues that came later that would try to repeat it. That didn't work so well, but I'll save that for the top 10 worst of all time. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, this is the content I love making. You know I love my top 10 lists. So I will see you at the next video. Keep on hunting. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out. Make sure to come down to Sentiment Depot Antiques and Collectibles, where I'm set up with all of my comics, located at 238 West Delaware Ave, Pennington, New Jersey. Open every day except for Monday and Tuesday. Enjoy 10% off from Wednesday to Friday. See you there.